and then he's basically
recording. Well, thank you, Leah. I thought there was a option in here where you can tag a message so it can, or pin a message so it can stay at the top. Maybe well, I thought that was one of the updates that WebEx did. I think you could just flag it. I don't know. Try it. I'm glad. Yeah.
I think it was in the update, but yeah, I'm not seeing it now as well.
Yeah. I know. Good morning, everyone. This is Leah Boggs. with the Climate and Energy team at the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. You have joined the Built Environment and Energy Advisory Committee meeting. The meeting has not started yet. We are waiting for folks to fill the virtual room as well as the chair. So if you could be patient, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you all?
We're doing well. We do have still some folks needed to file into the room, and it's just 9:58. So if you don't mind, Chair, we will wait till about maybe 10:02 to kick off the meeting.
That sounds great.
Great. So, Chair, I will go ahead and go over the meeting guidance, and then we can kick off the meeting officially. So, good morning, everyone. This is Leah Boggs again with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. Before the meeting officially starts, I will go over the meeting guidelines as we all are very familiar with. I don't have a slide for that, but as you know, you are muted as you officially join the meeting space. We do that so that we keep the the meeting space quiet and we block out any ambient noise. We do ask that you stay on mute if you are not adding verbally to the conversation. You do have the chat option of adding comments or questions if you are not speaking. We do ask when you do speak that you either raise your virtual hand and then give your name and your affiliation. We do also ask that you put that in the chat so we have an accurate account who is attending the meeting. And the meeting is recorded. That includes the chat option. So we do, by request, make that available to attendees, but we record it just for the meeting summary. And I think that's it. We do have my teammates here, Maya Davis on screen, also Robert Christopher, Alyssa Boggs, as well as Jeff King and Heidi Bonifon and Tim Masters in the chat. And Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Leah. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, BEAC members and stakeholders to our final meeting of 2025. Again, my name is Andy Young. I'm with the City of Falls Church, and this will be my last kind of BEAC chair event, but we'll talk a little more about 2025 kind of at the end of the meeting. We're going to hold jurisdictional introductions to kind of later in the agenda. As Leah remembered, please make sure to put your name and affiliation in the chat. So I think first off today, we're going to do approval of the September 19th, 2024 meeting summary. So for those of you that have not had a time to review it, we'll give you a couple minutes to take a look at that now. And after a minute or two, we'll kind of loop back, see if anybody's got any changes. Thanks. Anybody have any feedback or suggested changes? All right, here are none. The September meeting summary is considered final.
Andy, actually, I raised my hand.
Oh, well, please go ahead.
Okay, so I do have a comment about just the meeting minutes. In the first section under 3, had we really considered the sentence, if you go to the next page where it starts challenges, that paragraph, are we really considering coal to meet these demands? I don't remember us stating that, and is this something that actually COG is suggesting?
Sorry, I was on mute. Let me bring that up really quickly, if I can. You all would hold for a minute.
Yeah, if you want me to tell you again where it is, so you don't have to search. It's in the second page. Really, it's the first complete paragraph, and it's the last sentence. I was surprised that we said including nuclear, which I know is on discussion, but coal.
And what page is that on again?
It's on the page 3 of the meeting minutes.
Okay. And you all are able to see that, my screen? Can you all see?
No. No, we don't see your screen.
Okay. 1 second. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Page 3.
Yeah. So that first, you just went past it, that first paragraph.
Under.
Go down. It's the next paragraph. Go to the next page.
Oh, next page. Okay.
It's on page 3, the first paragraph. There, where it says challenges, the last sentence. I did not realize that we were considering coal to meet these needs. I was surprised to see that there.
So we could double check the comments, but Maya or Alyssa, do you all want to chime in here because it's under the energy utility data.
Right.
So jumping in, the way I interpreted that is, I don't know that it's like COG or BEEAC or anybody considering, more diverse energy sources such as nuclear and coal. My sense is that the utilities are having to consider that in order to meet the demand of data centers. That's how I read it.
Yeah, I do remember this. So there was a recent study that was completed that basically said that to meet data center demand, that nuclear and coal needs to be considered. That's not necessarily related to our projections. That was just, I think that was me. I think that was just a study that I was speaking to when we were kind of having the back and forth comments. But we are looking at the projections in terms of what we have to, like, what demand are the data centers really going to take as we move forward. So, but I didn't mean for it to reflect that, we need to do this with nuclear and coal. We're just doing the energy projections of like what the needs are, and not in those projections, we're not considering the sources.
Well, maybe
So
then you
could,
okay.
you could just end that sentence like after projections.
Okay, we'll make that change.
Okay. Thank you, Maya, for that clarification.
Okay.
Thank you for that catch.
I don't think we really are supporting that. So like,
Appreciate that.
Thanks for that point out. And so, Chair, it's still draft, but we'll make that change after the meeting, the final, and send it out as final with the change.
Okay, sounds good. Valerie, thank you for bringing that up and helping us fix that. Does anybody else have any thoughts or feedback or suggested changes? Okay, so with that change, I think we're considered final, Leah.
Yes.
All right, so then moving along, so the next section of our agenda is for the jurisdiction roundtable and a peer exchange. So I'm going to open it up to jurisdictions to comment on the framing questions, which will help, get us set up for the next two agenda items that we're going to talk about today on undergrounding power lines and solar deployment. If you've already kind of provided some feedback previously, no worries, you don't need to kind of provide that again to get it in, but feel free to kind of share additional thoughts that you might have. When you get started, please start with your name and jurisdiction to give us make sure everybody knows kind of who you are and where you're from. And then we're going to try and get through everybody. So please try and keep it succinct. And then, so we're going to start with the Virginia local governments this time. Is there anybody that wants to kick us off?
This is Najib Salehi with Loudoun County Government. I'm glad to be here today.
Great,
and,
Najib.
Next week is Thanksgiving, and I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Najib. Appreciate you sharing. Do you have any thoughts on some of the questions to tee up with in Fairfax County, or you all doing any, or not Fairfax County, I'm sorry, but are you doing anything related to undergrounding of power lines that you want to share, or
actually, yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, we don't have any undergrounding projects, with Loudoun County to discuss with you all. Since Loudoun County is pretty new, basically, most of it is underground. So I know the around Falls Church area and Arlington County in the past 20 years that I'm aware, there's a lot of undergrounding was going on. But with Loudoun County, since majority of it is pretty new established, so most of it is underground. So we are kind of pretty lucky in that regards because there are not many outages, power outages as a result.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Others from the Commonwealth of Virginia.
This is Sean O'Neill. I'm with Fairfax Water.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, and we about 15 years ago, we paid Dominion to underground our circuit that supplies power to our largest water plant, which is Corbliss and Herndon. And so I agree with Najib that we too in Fairfax have a lot of areas where substations are, where major pumping stations are that already are undergrounded. And I think we may have a few places by Tyson's that would need to be underground. It's something we work out with Dominion, but that's been our approach. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
It is interesting, Sean, that some of your underground project I worked on when I was with Dominion.
That's what I figured, Najib. Yep.
Yeah. It was nice to hear from you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Others from Virginia. So I think I'll share in the city of Falls Church. So we got a lot of resident interest in undergrounding power lines. I think even the storm that kind of blew through, I think the area last night, you get, trees and limbs fall down and knocks people's power out. And doing that in residential neighborhoods is like super expensive and not real practical. Where we have had some successes as we've done some redevelopment projects in the city, we've looked for the developers to strategically underground lines in certain areas of the city to help with that. It also helps with some of the ADA issues related to sidewalks and accessibility, where some of the older sidewalks have telephone or utility poles right in the middle of them. So there's an opportunity to kind of solve multiple problems at once. So if we don't have anybody else from the state of Virginia, maybe we'll move on to the state of Maryland. Any folks from the state of Maryland want to share with us today?
Good morning, everybody. This is Maddie from the city of Bowie.
Hi, Maddie.
We're very odd. All of our new developments do underground all of the utilities. Unfortunately, we have so many neighborhoods that are very old, and unlike a lot of other places, our utility poles and everything that is above ground is in the backyards of people. So even trying to figure out the logistics of trying to underground that would be a nightmare. So the only thing that we can do is basically just request that any new projects, any new kind of developments that come into the city go underground. And we've been very successful in that. But unfortunately, the older neighborhoods, those are difficult to do because of the way that the power lines are set up. So, yep. That's all for Bowie.
Thank you, Maddie. Others from Maryland. We also had some questions on rooftop solar. I know you all with the recent forum have probably covered this ground, but if anybody's, we've got two topics today. So, if folks have thoughts on the other one or just have some general updates they want to share, all that's good. All right, then we'll pivot to the District of Columbia. And anybody else that's with us today that wants to share.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is
Oops,
sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Now you go.
Let me just put my Hey, good
Emil, you
morning,
want to go?
everyone. Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Mark Ferrer from PepCo. I'm here to speak on the DC Plug initiative. I did put together a PowerPoint. If you guys will let me share it, or I can just speak to it. It's up to you guys how you would like to do this.
Well, hi, Mark. This is Leah. We're actually not at that agenda item yet. We're just doing roundtable.
Gotcha.
And then once we get to that agenda item 4, we will you can queue up your PowerPoint because I don't think I received it. So I'll allow you all to share it in advance and
Okay.
then you can send it to me later. Thank
Okay.
you.
I can send you right now if that's okay. And then however we want to do it when it comes to that point, we can do that as well.
Okay, that works.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. We'll be with you here in just a minute. So,
Yes, sir.
others.
Yes. Hi, Emil King, District Department of Energy and Environment. Yeah. So on the undergrounding, I'll let Mark speak to that. Other than to say, the city is supportive of these efforts generally, primarily from a resilience standpoint. So I'm not sure if someone from DDOT will be able to join us, but that's all I'll say on that. On the solar side, which is kind of what our focus is. I think to answer the questions, generally, we don't have really any economic or funding barriers at this point. On the economic side, we have a strong RPS that's been in place for umpteen years, and it's still the price of SREX is very high, so there's a ready market for solar in DC. From the funding side, we are actively engaged in obligating our EPA, Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, formula grant monies before the end of the calendar year, so that they can obviously be protected in light of the unknowns that we're all possibly facing. And that's about $62 million that'll go toward solar and battery deployment across a variety of residential and commercial spaces. So we think we're pretty good and solid on the economic side. Permitting is also in a good place. We streamlined permitting 6 or 7 years ago. That seems to be going well. Our biggest challenge remains geographic space and interconnection, which we're working with PEPCO definitely to address those. There's a lot a dense built environment. It's hard to find places to build systems, but the economics are there. So it's really just a function of infrastructure challenges, spot networks, limited space. But even with that, we've had still continued growth in solar. I think we're up like 22% this year over last year this time. About 250 megawatts installed. So we're focused on scaling really big projects and community solar projects as well, and leveraging those funding opportunities and the solar credits to kind of advance deployment. So we're in decent shape, and we're trying to hold steady on that path.
Cool. Excellent to hear, Emil. Thank you. Anybody else for our roundtable today? Open it up to anybody that wants to talk.
Chair, we do have some comments in the chat from Amanda Campbell in Rockville. Amanda, I don't know if you wanted to come off camera or verbally say your comments. It's up to you. I can read them out for you. Let us know.
Sure.
And then I'll go back out. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I was just going to speak in terms of like the regular residential rooftop solar because we don't really have space for much community solar in Rockville. I think that it's sort of the same types of issues with doing anything new with our residents. They're people are just hesitant to invest in something that looks expensive, and I think there's some issues with you get a letter in the mail, or so the contractor's knocking on your door, should you trust them? And we get a lot of questions about that, and help people through the process, but so, you know, it's just a new thing. So it's an educational thing too. And it is a big upfront cost. The lease helps with that, but you know, many of our more marginalized communities are not going to be interested in a lease at all because it's sort of another form of debt. And so that's a barrier. And then, you know, trees, we've got lots of trees. And so, you know, we just explain how, you know, you don't want to remove a healthy tree, but that's just a reality. And then in terms of our city, we're trying to implement 2 solar parking lot canopies. We got a grant to help with that, and we're trying to set up a PPA, and it's just been really slow going with permitting, and we had a few trees that were going to be affected there, and so sort of negotiating, you know, planting to offset those and going through all of our internal processes. So, you know, I was thinking it would be helpful. I started to try to look for it. I know you COG hosted like a procurement training, a budget training, but it was sort of a heavier lift. But if there's some other kind of, you know, like green purchasing and procurement training for procurement and finance officials or something, just to kind of, because it's kind of just a learning curve of like we're doing new things, and it takes a really long time to iron out, you know, the legal implications and things like that. Is there a way to like send along a webinar or something to some to folks to kind of give them a primer, say here's what other city procurement departments have figured out, here's how they handle this and that, here's why this isn't such a risk, you know, just like basic sort of trainings for people that aren't environmental specialists but are implementing these things. That was kind of an earful.
No, that was great, Amanda. I think part of that conversation, why we tee these kind of questions up as they lead into the main topics, we will get into that, and with ICF, Deb Harris from ICF. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Last call. Anybody else have some thoughts to share? Okay, so I think we're going to move on to our next agenda item. So, and we got a little preview of it already, but we're going to talk about a little bit about grid reliability and resilience today, and excited to have several representatives from PEPCO that are going to talk about the DC Power Line Undergrounding Initiative, or otherwise, I guess, with the cool acronym DC Plug. And which is a partnership with PEPCO and the District of Columbia to improve reliability in the DC energy grid. So we'll of course be able to take questions from the audience, but we're gonna first hear from Hakeem, Miriam, and Mark from PEPCO. So folks, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm not on camera, but this is Hakeem Mumford here. I am the External Affairs Manager for PEPCO, and I am the primary contact, for community affairs for the DC Plug project. And I am here joined with Mark and Miriam. So just wanted to introduce myself. I'm fairly new to the External Affairs group, so you know, just good to meet some of the other agencies and groups on the call here, and you know, kind of excited to give this information. So with that, I'll pass it over to Mark, who will present the presentation.
Cool, thank you, Hakeem, and thank you, Andy. So we got this presentation up right now. So as you guys are aware, it is the DC power undergrounding underground. Sorry, it is District of Columbia Power Undergrounding, or short for DC Plug. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is the agenda real quick. We'll go through the DC Plug background, the current status, education, outreach, and advertising, and we'll talk a little bit about the cost and the budget. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the DC Plug background. Next slide, please. So DC Plug, back, the DC Plug initiative is a reliability and resiliency initiative to underground 20 of the worst performing feeders in the District of Columbia. It is a multi-year initiative estimated at 500 million. We will select, as I said, we will select 20 feeders in District of Columbia in wards 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. This is a joint partnership between DDOT and PEPCO, again, to improve the resiliency and of the electric system. The purpose of it is to improve the systems by about 95% to reduce the amount of outages and the effect of these outages if they occur. So we can go to the next slide, please. So as we select these feeders, there is a few criteria that we do go through. There's 5 steps that we do use. The first one is based off of the January 2010 through December 31st, 2027. We ranked the feeders by historical reliability and customer minutes of interruptions reduced per dollar spent. So the safety number, which is the time it takes to re-energize the customer. The SAIDI number, which is the average cumulative outage duration for each customer. And the CMI, which is the customer interruption, which is just the number of minutes of forced interruptions times the number of affected customers. We have identified the ranked feeders in each of the wards. Like I said, Ward 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8 of the District of Columbia, characterized by the large concentration of overhead power lines susceptibility to overhead outages. We do also analyze ongoing reliability work as current and planned system work. We have identified opportunities to take advantages of existing or planned DDOT road reconstruction projects. And we finalized the feeder selection for the inclusion of the Bando plan. So if you just look on the right-hand side, you can see some of the existing construction work that's going on. We currently have a few feeders that are still in construction now, but we'll discuss that a little bit more as we go through the PowerPoint. Next slide, please. So this just gives pretty much a timeline of the DC Plug program. So starting about 2012, when the mayor established a task force following severe storms, it was determined that electrical systems, an improvement to the electrical system would require a large investment. This was when the DC Plug program was proposed by PEPCO and DDOT following these storms. And as you go down, you can see just the progression through the program. Looking into November 2017, the approval of the first Bando plan. If you go down to January 2020, you look at the approval of the second Bando plan, and in 2022, you see the approval of the third Bando plan. And in the middle, you can see just like I said, it is a $500 million investment. You can just see the split through, where the money comes from. So it's $250 million investment from PEPCO. The district pays the $187 million, and DDOT pays the remaining $62 million. So we can go to the next slide, please. So now we'll take a look at some of the current statuses of the feeders. Currently, we do have 3 feeders that are completed. So completed meaning all the construction is done and the customers are energized with underground lines. We do currently have 3 feeders in civil construction. 2 have been completed the past couple of months. What comes next for those 2 feeders is they will start electrical construction in the upcoming months. We do anticipate to have 12 feeders going into construction in 2025 and 2026. And then, like I said, there are a few feeders going into electrical construction once the feeders in civil construction are completed. So currently we have about 4 that are anticipated to go into construction in 2025. Next slide, please. So this just shows a just general overview of the DC plug feeders and just kind of the timelines again. As you see, they are color coded with various statuses. Again, just shows the timeline and the approval of the biennials. And if you do look on the right-hand side, I know it is a bit small, but it just shows, where all these feeders are in the DMV. So it kind of just speaks to the diversity of the program as we are trying to underground, again, the worst performing feeders, but, they are throughout the DMV. So we want to keep it diverse in that regard. Next slide, please. So now we'll just take a quick look at the cost and the budget. So again, you have the cost sharing on the left-hand side. And then you just kind of shows the pie chart just shows kind of a breakdown of kind of how these costs kind of, are divvied up throughout PEPCO and the DDOT district. So the main cost for DDOT and the district is the civil construction labor costs. For PEPCO, like I said, it's $250 for PEPCO. The majority of those costs, I know there's a lot of different aspects of it that go into it, but the main cost that you're going to see is the engineering costs, that being the civil and electrical designs, as well as the project and construction management costs and the cost of material to do the actual construction. Next slide, please. So now we're going to take a quick look at, the education, outreach, and advertising. So throughout this program, we do like to, increase awareness, to the public and to the general and to stakeholders that are being affected by this program. So we do have, education and outreach during the civil construction side and during electrical construction side. As you can see for the civil side, we do have outreach at various stages of the construction. So you can see we do it at 30 days before construction, 10 days before construction, 7 days, 72 hours, and so on and so forth. So we do like to keep awareness of what's to come so the customers know what to expect and they know, what is going to be going on in the areas that our construction is going on. We do also have the ANC meetings prior to or well before the start of construction to give the residents, an opportunity to kind of learn more about the program, ask any questions, and voice any concerns they may have. With regards to electrical construction, most of the education and outreach comes closer towards the end of construction, particularly when we are scheduling outages. And the outages are used to essentially to transfer the power from overhead to underground. So once all the lines are put in place, we do coordinate outages. The customers may experience, a few hours of outages, but that's just to transfer the power, like I said, from overhead to underground. Next slide, please. And this is just a few examples of, how we try to get the word out with the program. As you can see, it is a lot of different ways. Newspapers, we do put it on, the buses, just to kind of raise awareness about the program. We do want to make sure that this has a lot of high visibility because, it is something that's very important. And we do want to make sure people understand the purpose and the value of this program. We do also try to target different demographics with this outreach. As you can see, we do have it in different languages, just to make sure we're capturing, all demographics within the DMV, or as many as possible. Next slide, please. And I think that's pretty much it. So thank you guys for listening to this quick presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mark, for sharing that with us today. I was particularly impressed. It's great to learn kind of the scope of kind of the work that you all are doing in the district. I think I was particularly struck by the outreach and communication that you all do to the community about your projects, like the different forms of communication and the bus graphics and different languages and it's a good model for communicating projects and initiatives to folks. Open it to the group. Folks have questions for Mark and Hakeem?
I actually have a question, Mark. So I actually live in one of those areas and wondering how do you all communicate? Is text a way that you all communicate? Because I'm always getting text messages that there's an outage in my area. So is that one of the ways?
I would double check on that, but what we do for visibility of outages, we do door tags and phone calls. So it's possible that you may be getting the same kind of text, but I'll need to double check on that. But we do it through door tags and phone calls.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mark, I've got one. So it was helpful to see, like you said, you were talking about, you've got 3 feeders that you guys have kind of successfully completed. Have you all noticed some kind of reliability improvements already because of those, or are we too early in the process? But have you seen kind of some performance improvements as a result of all this work?
Yes, I would say these feeders were completed relatively new, so it is a little bit too early to tell. But like I said, again, the idea is to improve resiliency and reliability up to 95%. Doesn't mean that there won't be an outage. It means that if there is, it's going to be less severe and it will affect less customers.
Thank you. Other folks? Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. This was an excellent presentation. Really appreciate it. So a question is, how does the DC plug project, how does it affect the tree canopy? If people are worried about construction happening in their neighborhood, does it result in the loss of any trees, or maybe it actually protects the trees long term?
Yeah, so to that point, I think some of the designs we do are designed to stay away from the tree root zone. So the idea is to make sure that we're not impacting the natural vegetation in the area, and if we are, we're making sure it's being restored.
Thank you.
There's also a question in the chat asking about any conflicts with underground water or I guess other utilities.
Yeah, so there is continuous coordination with all the other utilities, that being Washington Gas, DC Water, everything like that. There have been a few, incidents, but they have been resolved. They get resolved, as soon as possible. But it's a continuous, ongoing initiative to make sure that everything's coordinated properly. During the design process, essentially all, impacted stakeholders with regards to utilities do sign off on these designs. Everyone reviews the designs to make sure, at a design stage, there are no conflicts. And, as stuff can happen in the field, continuous coordination is being done to make sure issues don't happen, and anything that does happen is resolved quickly.
So I asked the questions. I'm going to ask you one more question about the water part of it. DC isn't exactly next to the ocean, so even though sea level rise is going to affect the Potomac, you don't have that high salinity yet. But as it keeps increasing, the salinity is going to go up. So is there any precaution that's being done with these lines when you're burying them that the water around them may not always be as it is now? The salinity level would go up and possibly compromise their integrity?
I'm sorry, I missed the middle part. Can you speak up a little bit more, please?
Sure. You can hear me okay, or I just need to repeat it?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you repeat it, please?
Sure. So what I'm asking is that you mentioned about the water. What I'm asking about is that the DC area is going to be affected by sea level rise. And while the Potomac is not like right on the ocean, so how the full salinity of that ocean would bring to a potential problem, but it's going to increase in salinity. Have you taken any precautions while you're undergrounding these lines, that water would change in salinity and perhaps compromise the integrity of those lines?
So I would say, and I can let Miriam chime in as well. The equipment that we do have underground is we don't want them to be submerged, but they are they can be fully submerged in the event of anything like that. With regard to the salinity of the water, I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm not sure if I think that is a very good question. That hasn't been a concern has been brought to our attention. So I would say that it's probably not something that we would consider an issue now, but it's definitely something we can take a look at and consider in the future.
And Mark, if I may, I'll just say with any of our projects, especially infrastructure projects and permitting, we work very closely with the district's Department of Energy and the Environment. All of the work goes through environmental studies. And so I think Al might be able to chime in here, but there are precautions that are taken, and there are environmental studies and reviews prior to us getting approval for these types of projects.
I understand. The reason I'm bringing up is a lot of times when we do these projects, we don't project future forward changing conditions. We have a tendency to either be historic or present and within a short time frame. I'm assuming that these underground lines are going to last a lot more than 10, 20, perhaps even 50 years. You actually haven't mentioned how long they're supposed to be viable for, but if those conditions do change and this is major infrastructure, considering that future forward data is really, really critical to making sure your investment does what it's supposed to do, which is why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, kind of what everyone said, there are precautions that are put in place that are, contingent on this kind of stuff being approved. I think it's a good point to bring up as well. And I think that's something that we'll just consider, moving forward as we continue through this program.
Any final questions for Mark? All right, Mark, we appreciate you being here with us today to share about DC Plug. It's a great presentation.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, so I think next, moving along, we've got our Solar Forum follow-up discussion. So we're going to hear from ICF on the follow-up from the forum, get input from us as a group on the proposed roadmap action framework, roof map. I got it wrong. Roof map action framework and next steps. So with that, I'll turn it over to Deb Harris.
Great, thanks, Andy. And thanks everyone for having me today to talk through the solar forum that occurred in the end of October. I'm happy to give an update. So I think once the slides are up, I will jump right in.
One second, everyone.
Thanks, Leah.
Robert, are you able to share the slides for me? I'm having some technical difficulties on my end.
Let me pull them up real quick.
Thank you.
Mhm. Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you. Great. And we can just move on to the next slide. Let me just double check. It looks like this might not be the right version of the presentation.
One second, everyone.
Okay. And Leah, I'll just try. I can also try to pull it up on my end if that's easier.
Yeah, that might be easier. But I do have them up now. Let's see. I think this is the right version. Okay, here we are. Are you able to see them now?
Yeah, but
This is yeah.
okay. I think it should be
Would you
something
like to
different.
share them?
Yeah, let me just double check on my end. I know it might take me a minute to find them, and I don't want to hold up the agenda. So Andy, I don't know if it's possible to move to the next agenda item and flip while I just find the correct set of slides.
Yeah, I think we can do that. We've got hold on, I turned my video off. So it's okay, maybe we'll do some of our COG updates and announcements, and then we'll go back to Deb.
Yes, that works. So I think we are actually a little ahead of schedule, so that works. So we do have a small change in the updates. I'll give an update on ACPAC's memo to CPC regarding some recommendations that they gave to CPC and to MWAC back in May, but I'll be speaking specifically to the one sent to CPC, and I'll give the CPRG update, and Maya will follow up. So back in May, as mentioned, as you recall, ACPAC, that's the Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee, which is a citizen advisory committee that speaks to or provides input to the policy committee, CPC, and MWAC. But back in May, they sent a memo to CPC with 9 recommendations. We did send that, staff did send that to BEEAC and ask for comments. BEEAC did not provide any comments as it was a policy, some policy elements that ACPAC wanted the policy committee to speak to. But in July and September, CPC spent some time and discussed some different ideas for how to respond, very similar to how the MWAC technical committee responded, sent a memo to MWAC for approval. So CPC was looking or possibly looking to do something similar. They decided there was interest in corresponding with the board, but there wasn't a lot of clarity around time and focus, but it was clear that they wanted staff to check with the COG leadership on how to move forward, because the memo was speaking to not just CPC level response, but a COG board response. So on the staff level, absent of any sort of official response from CPC, we began addressing some of the points outlined in the memo. If you all can't remember what the memo stated, I will put the link in the chat when I'm finished. But at ACPAC's September meeting, staff presented on COG's greenhouse gas emissions inventories and methodology. That was specifically the point number 9 of the memo that spoke to periodic compiling and reporting of greenhouse gas emissions and the need for sort of continuous examination and tracking of climate goals. So that is a very, very heavy lift for staff. As you all know, we do a lot of work in that area regionally and for individual local governments. And so at the last meeting, November meeting on Monday of ACPAC, we discussed some potential next steps for CPC. The main area of focus was a response to setting more aggressive goals. As I said, that was one of their elements to set more aggressive goals. And so on that note, there was also an issue of land use and data centers. They're a high priority related to both CPC and ACPAC discussions. Maya will get in more to what we're doing on the staff level related to data centers, but they did point out that it is data centers is a land use permitting issue. And we did point out to them that, COG does not get involved in local issues because land use is a local issue. And we don't set policy. The COG board does not set like policy for our local member jurisdictions. And so based on what we heard from leadership, we won't be looking at no new goals until we understand how we're doing towards meeting our current goal. We do have the CPRG CCAP, the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, which I'll get into in a bit. And we'll do a mid-course review, which Maya will review. But we'll be looking at ACPAC and BEEAC to participate in much of this process and surveying. Over the past couple of years, we've been cognizant of some of the suggestions that you all have, our local governments has said that we ask a lot of you. We've, as you all know, for many years, we've done many surveys, very, in-depth surveys. So we sort of backed off of doing some of that. But for this mid-course review, in terms of looking at where we are in our goals, we'll be looking for your input on that. And some short-term goals would be, again, sort of perhaps doing a short survey to help us on that. And we'll also be looking at another thing in terms of outreach and education, to start work on thinking how to design a campaign related to more greenhouse gas emissions, or trying to meet our current goals for sure. And in terms of CCAP, just very quickly, as you know, there are two plans under the program, the Priority Climate Action Plan, or PCAP, and then the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, CCAP. The PCAP was due in March, and we submitted, and it focused on some short-term actions and had 8 priorities. COG was designated as the sort of body to support the MSA climate planning, which included Virginia and West Virginia localities outside of the COG footprint. And so we also did we applied for some additional funding that we did not receive. However, we are moving forward with the CCAP process, the Comprehensive Climate Action Process, which expands on the PCAP and focuses on long-term actions. In terms of where we are, we just kicked off our CCAP process, where we're endeavoring to do a robust engagement strategy. We're also looking at updating our greenhouse gas emissions and projections for 2050. Again, the COG board does not have the appetite of advancing or having more aggressive goals, but we'll be looking at how we could obviously reach that goal. And then if it looks like we'll be doing that, we could possibly look at a more aggressive goal, but we're not there yet in terms of the COG board. We'll also be looking at some more analytics in terms of robust implementation, as well as looking at LIDAC and disadvantaged communities and doing a workforce development analysis. And so, Maya, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Leah. So I think a key thing that we wanted to get across to you guys is that, we're essentially using CPRG as a tool to help us with the work of CPC and BEEAC and in response to the ACPAC memo. And so just to dive a little bit deeper, we had a meeting with some of the counties on data centers earlier this fall. And after that discussion, we are following up to collect data and information. And then we're holding another meeting on December 12th. So if anybody's very interested in being a part of a data center conversation with jurisdictions in the region and you haven't received an invite, just let us know. We can forward that to you. But what we're doing in the meantime is we are collecting data on the square footage of data centers in each jurisdiction, what's there, what's being proposed or anticipated, and that is going to help us basically create a carve out in our greenhouse gas inventory work for all the jurisdictions and for the MSA scale inventory for data centers. So we're collecting, we've sent out a local government survey. You should have received that from Alyssa Boggs. And we're also collecting data center square footage from our regional CoStar database that we also use for a portion of the greenhouse gas inventory. We're just trying to pull out the specific data center information and see how it compares, looking at existing estimated EUI for data centers. And so that this type of information we're working on collecting right now is going to help us make that estimate for that carve out for data centers in the inventories. And then we're going to use that information to help us with the projections for the CPRG Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. If this works out and we're able to collect good data and provide estimates that look good to everybody, then it's something that we'd like to continue to do in future inventories, is to provide that data center carve out for those of you that have data centers in your jurisdiction. There's also been a lot of interest in an energy generation carve out. Earlier this fall, we actually talked to you guys about the utility energy trends. And we've been able to carve out and are still working on a couple pieces of it, like the new natural gas plants that are providing energy to the grid. And so in our inventory work for 2023, we're also looking at that energy generation carve out for your inventories. As far as the mid-course review and how we're doing, the inventories are really going to inform a big portion of that. It's like updating all the information that's already on the climate energy dashboard that we have. So Leah mentioned doing a survey, you guys, so we can look and communicate to the public all the actions that are underway in the region to support reducing gas emissions. And then we can also look at the outcomes. So how have our emissions been reducing? What do the energy trends look like? Here's the trends in electric vehicles and electric vehicle infrastructure and solar and, all this like supporting information that kind of shows progress. So we're going to try to get this all done in 2025 so that we can better communicate and know where we are towards our 2030 goal. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Maya. Leah, so Deb, I think we're ready to pivot back to you if you're ready for us.
I am, thanks. Yep. Great. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and then just let me know if you can see it. Excellent. Thanks so much. And sorry about that. And Leah, I noticed there's a snafu in what I sent you. So apologies about that. But so again, thanks for having me today to talk through the Clean Energy Forum follow-up. The focus was on solar. So I'm just going to jump into a review of what was covered in this session. So the basic overview is that this event was co-hosted with COG as well as Mason Energy, which is a George Mason University initiative. It was in Arlington at the George Mason campus and a one-day workshop at the end of October where approximately 75 attendees were there. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide here, just a word cloud representing the makeup of the audience, mostly local government. So I know a number of folks on the phone here today were there, as well as developers, nonprofits, state government agencies were there, and some very specific other folks in the residential space, financiers, some specific school divisions as well, transit agencies. I know WMATA showed up. So a nice mix of folks who are very active in the solar space in the region. The overall goal of this event was multifold. So providing an overview of relevant policy and regulatory landscape was what we focused on somewhat in the morning, and some key statistics around deployment to date. We did have some discussion around how to represent what that deployment looks like, and how far COG is along with the 250,000 rooftop goal by 2030. Hearing from different industry leaders and collating and really figuring out how to share that information was also a core focus for the day. And we spent the afternoon talking through opportunities and challenges for more widespread and rapid market deployment. The other few things we wanted to focus on were building solutions and looking at some real regional examples and very specific examples of successful projects, which we did through a panel discussion in the morning, which I'll talk through, and then identifying key players and stakeholders. So we managed to get through a lot of this in the forum and are looking forward to continuing the discussion leading into what will hopefully be a spring forum that's focused on kind of progress and next steps. So first off, I just want to highlight and say thank you to the folks who did the panel discussion. We had about an hour and change in the morning to talk about learning from regional successes and a really nice mix of projects that were highlighted. Currently, the ICF team is working with COG to develop information to share around these specific case studies in written formats, as well as kind of the challenges that they helped overcome. So we're looking forward to that material kind of getting out into the hands of folks to use. So we walked through the different examples listed here. We had the Church of the Holy Comforter, Reverend John Strand, who talked about the use of direct pay and the project installed at the church and kind of going through that process. We had two school districts, Prince William County as well as Stafford County, talk about their specific projects and how they had overcome installation challenges and how they went through their actual process. And then Bob Lazaro talked about Solarize Nova and NVRC's role in that. And John Morrell talked about some municipal examples within Fairfax County where they did some interesting things to get to address the interconnection challenges with Dominion. So again, looking forward to sharing some more written information around these different regional successes. After lunch, we focused on some core active work sessions. There are two deliverables. One of them I just referred to earlier. The first is a memo that will capture kind of the challenges that we heard within the forum itself, what works and what didn't work, and an overview of the case studies that were presented in the morning. So that's something that is on track and should be available hopefully end of this year, early next year. And then the start of an action plan framework, or what we're referring to as the solar roof map, that's going to map out different work streams and actions to address key challenges to overcome and accelerate solar deployment in the region. This specifically is something that will be kind of the start of what it looks like following this session, and then continue to be developed over the coming months and into the spring, and aspects of it integrated into the comprehensive climate action plan. So as Maya was mentioning earlier, this is one of the events and kind of key themes that the CCAP CPRG money is being used to fund that really is going to help advance towards COGS goals in the region. There were 3 sessions that were framing the afternoon that are listed here. The first was around project economics and funding. And within this, we talked and voted about which project types to focus on. So whether it's residential, commercial, multifamily, municipal, we did focus more specifically, I believe, around the commercial aspects and multifamily. within here, as well as touched on municipal. And then from there, had an active kind of voting to rank challenges for discussion. We did a survey before the forum to get insight as to which challenges were kind of rising to the top within the region, and use that as the basis for the ranking. And then had an active discussion around to identify solutions. We did a very similar framing, or I should say the exact same framing for the second session, which was around permitting and interconnection challenges. And then took a brief break, and in the last session did kind of a start of the action planning framework. So essentially what we're going to land with, hopefully at the end of this process, is a challenge, a solution set for those challenges, and then short-term actions to support implementation to overcome any challenges or barriers following on that. So just a really brief overview of some of the things that we heard in these sessions around project economics and funding. For example, we did spend, as I mentioned, some time around the municipal project set, and there were kind of 4 key challenges that rose to the top in discussions here around capacity to pursue funding and incentives, finding incentive information or a lack of consolidated information that's out there, changing incentives and availability and grants over time, and then fitting municipal financial elements and structures together for projects that really occur in kind of one-off or unique ways. There were some solutions that were thrown out there in terms of discussion. These are on the right-hand side of the table here. I think a lot of this was focused around more information, consolidated and clearer information in a centralized manner. How and where can that be taken from? More education around opportunities like direct pay and tax credits, and then figuring out how those work with different project structures, and how the actual solar installer, developer, company can help support these types of solutions with their knowledge base. And then thinking about structures for green banks and using more flexible portfolio approaches to kind of standardize projects and scale them. This slide has a lot on it in the interconnection and permitting space, because we did spend a fair amount of time kind of focused on a lot of the challenges here. In this space, we talked more in the commercial and multifamily project sector. I'm not going to read all of the challenges here. The slides, I'll make sure the correct version is shared and can be accessed by everyone. And then this will again feed into the solar roof map that we'll be working through with COG as well as different stakeholders. But these challenges focused on things like additional fiber connection requirements and interconnection limits, varied permitting and zoning in different jurisdictions, and the fact that that's a very localized issue. Thinking about unique home ownership and building ownership situations, different governance structures in HOAs and condos, thinking about hosting capacity. So a lot of these things that we know come up as challenges in this sector. The other thing that we unpacked quite a bit was around staffing limitations, and this was discussed across the board. So not just necessarily like a utility staffing issue or a local government staffing issue, but also permitting and review staffing can be a limiting factor. So this, again, the solution set was started to be unpacked within discussion. And these are some of the kind of the higher level solutions that are out there. Some things like hosting capacity maps. I know that there's some out there. Is there a way to make them more comprehensive, so more usable for some of the end users? A way to have COG potentially serve as a facilitator in discussions and sharing more approaches and lessons learned through events like this solar forum. A way to work with developers that have local relationships in their experience, so how to really utilize that, as well as kind of move faster through the permitting and zoning processes, and then figuring out what are those really good kind of best case examples and how to actually share that information in a meaningful way. So there are a lot of ideas covered here. This is just a very high level summary of them. Again, they'll be unpacked further as we go through the roof map process. So very briefly then, in terms of next steps, what we did again was have this event in October. We're preparing the challenges and solutions memo with case studies right now, anticipating and hoping to do ongoing conversations coordinated with different stakeholder groups to develop that roadmap. So again, we have the start of it. How can we continue to flesh that out over the coming months? And then looking forward to another joint event with Mason Energy in the spring of 2025 to review progress, review the roof map, discuss any new additional areas of challenges and opportunities. We only got to start to touch the surface on the project funding and financing and interconnection and permitting, so could unpack those a little bit further as well. But I think the key thing to take from this slide is that COG is really looking at this as kind of a continued discussion and ongoing process with a real focus on ensuring that the 2030 goals are met. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, but that is the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Deb. Questions from the group?
We do have a comment in the chat from Amanda Campbell again. She says, and Amanda, let me know if you wanted to come off screen and add to this, but it would be helpful to align the COG 2050 goal with the Paris Agreement type guidance of close to net zero by 2050 or sooner, since that's the going wisdom, and also aligns with the Maryland's goals. We don't have to have perfect greenhouse gas emissions information in order to set an aspirational goal aligned with the world. Local support feels even more crucial after the election. I think the data center carve out will help make this a more fair proposal for our region. I think what Amanda speaks to is a similar sentiment to members of the Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee. That is sort of the total premise of their conversation and their recommendations. So. I don't see any other comments yet or hand up yet.
Erica has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Erica, did you?
Erica, the floor is yours. And we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Yeah, if you're speaking, Erica, no one can hear you. And let's see if
Yeah,
I can.
can I follow up on my comment? I don't know if did BEAC already have a discussion on the ACPAC memo at a previous meeting that I missed? It's quite possible.
No, we did not, but we did send it out probably for the June meeting, because they were completed at the May ACPAC meeting. They were sent to both CEPC and MWAC at their May meetings, so it wouldn't have been available before then. And we included it at the June BEAC meeting information. And we also asked for comments from BEAC members, and we had not received any. And Chair, you can chime in here as well.
No, I think you've got it covered.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't mean to bring in this topic when it's not on the agenda, but it might, maybe for a future agenda, I think it might be helpful to ask BEAC to have that conversation about the extra sort of technical support that you're working on with ICF, and the questions that were brought up at the CEPC meeting the other day, just to get their input. I mean, one thing is the goal. I know you're really focused on the greenhouse gas emission inventory now, but another was outreach and doing sort of a little bit more on that front. And I think this group can probably speak to the needs on that level. Yeah, and then just in terms of the data center issue, I know that's been talked about And I just wonder, I know like adding up the amount of energy that it uses is one thing, but I wonder if this is sort of something that COG could help with doing some research on going forward, because Maryland had done a study that looked at the energy grid and electrification and energy efficiency and all this, and the basic takeaway, this was like last year or the year before, the basic takeaway was we're fine. We can handle electric vehicles and so forth without like adding new major generation. And now all of a sudden with the giant expansion of AI, we're looking at big increases all of a sudden in electricity rates and so forth. And this sort of threatens all of the building code goals and things to try to electrify or EV goals and so forth. So how are we gonna try to mitigate this, and should we be paying higher rates if it's like half of the global information is going through Loudoun County? I don't know. This is a big issue. It raises a lot of questions. So maybe that's another, I don't know, agenda item, or maybe others agree that, that's something to the way to mitigate. How do you mitigate this? How do you manage this? And how do you keep rates stable going forward is something that COG would be helpful for COG to look into.
So, Chair, if you wanted to follow up, but I think we'll try to take that under consideration. So I am trying to parse out what conversation you were relating to the ACPAC memo, or were you sort of seeing it all connected, or were there specific points? I mean, you may not have gotten a chance to look at the ACPAC memo, but as mentioned, we did ask for comments, and but if there's an appetite for next year to kind of bring it back up or have an actual agenda item on the agenda internally, or leadership, BEAC leadership did discuss it. I think it was in the probably the summertime. Yeah. And because we didn't get any appetite, and I think we sent it out a couple times to get any feedback to BEAC, and we had not. So, but since it's
so maybe Leah, to jump in, I think Amanda, you hit on a lot of things. They're all interconnected, and kind of teasing that out to kind of what are the things I think for us to focus on is a little tricky, and maybe that's something we can talk more about. I think the memo discussion, I think from earlier this year, was a little, we're trying to figure out how to meet the goals we've already got, and do we spend time and effort to kind of set a new set of goals that that are even more ambitious. And I mean, we've even had a similar conversation with our environmental council here in the city of Falls Church, and I think so yeah. So I mean, I think folks have different opinions on that, right? I think you've kind of articulated it in the chat a little bit, and I'll open it up to let you chat, share your thoughts with the group some more. But I think it's that tension between like, what goals do we set, and then how do we focus on kind of actually, the things that we can do to meet them. And I think between the memo and then I think some of your thoughts on data centers, there's some things in there that we could tease out that maybe that COG, the BEAC can work on and engage on next year. But please, I'll turn it over to you.
And
well, can I chime in for a second?
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. So I think a piece of this that caught my attention that Amanda was saying was about education and outreach, because there's appetite from ACPAC and from CPC members for COG to do like a big regional, public outreach campaign on climate change. And to the likes of like our Commuter Connection program or our Clean Air Partners program. And but you guys are the ones that do that work, right? So I mean, I think that's probably a big piece to work on with you guys, because in the past we've gotten mixed signals about how much we should be doing from the folks like yourselves who are on the ground doing outreach and engagement with the communities on this topic. So I think that's a big one. And certainly, Amanda, if you'd like to join the data center conversation next month, we're kind of digging in to the data center topic as part of the CPRG work right now with, a subgroup. First, we were just with the counties that had already told, like, we know have data centers, or that told us like, hey, we're getting some proposals for data centers here. So it was a smaller group, but anybody that wants to dig in, we can kind of keep working on that through like a subgroup right now, but certainly like can talk about what's appropriate to, really tackle with the full group here. But those were two of my, I think, takeaways. Amanda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that kind of was my takeaways.
And yeah, and I don't know if Amanda, were you here when we did the weekend program or education campaign? Jeff mentioned it actually yesterday at CPC. He reminded us of it, and I remember he said there were 2 communities, but I think there were more like 3 or 4 communities, Meyer, right? It was one in Loudoun County, it was Brookland, and then one in Virginia, because we always try to be, or one in Maryland, so we always try to be, I think the other one was Greenbelt. So we did, right, so we did a program, and I do remember it was a heavy lift. We have a small, at that time it was a smaller, team that we had, and we went out to communities. Each of us went out to communities within those 3 areas and did a campaign. So, I mean, as Maya mentioned, we did get feedback before about, how you all are the ones that are actually doing that work. So we will have to sort of think about, because CPC, like Maya said, they do have an appetite for that. So that is kind of our charge to then think about, craft, frame, how do we develop a education campaign around this issue, and then what does that look like for our role, participation in it, and then think through what what this partnership between probably COG and our local governments will look like in the education campaign. And I thought there were hands up, but I'm not sure if they are still there. I know Erica Bannerman said she was having mic issues.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Great.
Awesome. Good morning again, and thanks so much, Deb, for the presentation and the update. I noticed in the title it says solar roof map. And I think I've sort of plugged this comment before, but I am taking into consideration Leah's comment or first principle that COG doesn't get involved in land use and land use policy. But here in Maryland, we are looking at a pretty exciting year at the General Assembly involving utility scale, land-based solar deployment. So much so that MACO hosted a fall symposium here in Prince George's County to bring together all of the solar experts for a full day to really talk about challenges, concerns, barriers, so that we are prepared for this upcoming General Assembly session. So my question to the Council of Governments is, are we planning to have any focus on ground-mounted systems, whether those are canopy systems, whether those are systems that are just located on brownfields, et cetera?
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
don't
if we've
know.
gotten that far yet.
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten that far
Unless
yet.
Leah or Deb remember. Something we definitely want to talk with you all about. That's definitely, Deb, Leah, let's put that on the list.
Right.
To be part of this solar planning process. I don't know, Deb, do you have any other insight or recollection of the conversations related to this at the solar forum?
if you are speaking, we can't hear you. Well, maybe she stepped away. So, I mean, I was there as well as some other staff. Alyssa and Robert were there, and I don't think that particular nuance came up. I could be wrong, but as Maya said, I think we will have to take this comment back and sort of talk it through more.
Okay, wonderful.
So
Because
thank
there's a
you.
lot of, I mean, we most definitely, we want to move forward, of course, sustainably. But there's just a lot of push in Maryland that's focused on those land-based deployments. And so I just thought it was important to bring that conversation to BEAC so that whatever takes place in the spring, that we're all in alignment. Because I wasn't unfortunately able to attend that solar forum in Virginia. So I'm not sure if there was any, Maryland representation there that talked about what was coming down the pipeline from the General Assembly session in 2025.
Yeah, I'm thinking that through.
Yeah, Leah, there
Yeah.
were a number of folks from Maryland there. MDE did show up. Montgomery County was there. I have to go back and look at the list, but I think that specific issue did not come up.
I have a comment. Amanda, I'm going to respond to what you were talking about. And so I understand the COG can't really tell a city what to do with its land use. But at the same time, when I worked in other places, there was always the concept of concurrency. So if you bring us a project, a development, you have to be able to ensure that you have capacity for water, for sewer, for whatever else. And if you don't, then to move forward, either you reduce the scope of your project or you provide it. So in terms of the data centers, this is something that could be something placed on them. So instead of impacting the capacity that's there and increasing it, you say, if you're going to bring the same thing, you have to supply it. And in a lot of ways, the data centers can do this. Usually they're more like warehouse type buildings. So they have fairly rectangular flat roofs. So they have solar potential, both on the roof and on the sides of it, vertical, horizontal, as well as geothermal. So data centers, I think if you were to bring up the idea of concurrency, that you need to provide your own power and not connect to whatever's there, would do a lot to not have it escalate. So far in the city of Alexandria, we do not seem to have any data centers, and I don't think anybody is interested in us. But the point is for us as well, it might be a yet. I don't think that we're immune, but this is something that if it comes to us, I would push very hard. If you're going to do this, then you figure out how you're going to supply your energy, and you're not going to start hitting our capacity because we already have issues with Dominion, with interconnection fees, and they're based on the capacity for those substations. So if they start to absorb that, then they would take most of our capacity and would leave us with really high cost to do anything that we want to do.
Thank you, Valerie. Okay, so Leah's got it. Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate that. Anybody else?
And I don't see anything else in the chat.
Okay. So I think, Leah, unless you or Maya have any additional announcements, I think we're going to wrap up a little early today. Today's my last meeting as the chair of BEAC. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of spend this time and work with you all over the last year. We will have a new chair and vice chair, so we'll have some news on that to share pretty soon. And we'll be looking for a third member of the BEAC leadership team for 2025 from a jurisdiction in Virginia. So if any of our Virginia folks are interested in serving in that capacity, I encourage you to reach out to Leah. She'll tell you all about it and what the commitments are and how you can help. It's a great way to kind of help contribute some ideas to the things we spend our time on in this forum. I think our next meeting is going to be in February 20th of 2025. So unless we run into you all in some other capacity here over the next month or two, hope you have a great set of holidays, and we'll see you in 2025.
Thank you,
all.
everyone.
Have a great day.
And Valerie, I see your comment, so I'll reach out. Everyone have a good holiday, or however you celebrate next week.
Have a good one.
Thank
you.
you.
everybody.
Happy
Bye.
holidays. Bye.